Hey everybody, thought I'd talk to you today about Winn Dixie of all things. Miss Cutter started with Winn Dixie in 1974. I started in 1975. Both of us worked several years with them, and we were discussing about how the standards were so much more different back then than they are today. You know yourself, when you go to the grocery store, there's not a very high premium put on grooming and personal hygiene and the way you present yourselves. And back then, the boys had to wear white shirts, black pants, and black shoes to work with a tie, and you had to have your name tag, whether you were male or female. If you didn't have your name tag when you clocked in, you were sent home. That was mandatory to have a name tag. You had to have a certain grooming when you came to work. Your mustache, if you wore one, they frowned on it, but if they did allow it, but it couldn't extend beyond the end of your lips and had to be cut up above the upper lip. And your hairline could not exceed the back of your collar, and your hair could not come down over your ears. And so I remember a boy that wanted a job there when I was working there, and he worked at a little restaurant behind the Winn Dixie of the one that I worked at. And he came up there to get a job, and he had a full beard. And of course, to get the job, he had to shave everything off. And Miss Cutter and I worked at the same Winn Dixie for a short while, but for the most part, over the years, we worked at different Winn Dixies. She had to wear a uniform. All the girls had to wear uniforms, and was it white shoes? White shoes for the girls. And they had somebody that worked over there in the cosmetics and pharmacy. They were called a Code 7. They had to wear a yellow uniform. But Miss Cutter, she primarily ran a cash register, also worked in the deli. And was there anything else you did? Deli and the cash register. And she won a Winn Dixie, what did they call it?
Courteous cashier.
Courteous cashier pin, which was, you really had to do everything right whenever the secret customer come through your line. And she had one come through her line, and it was rare that for any cashier to receive one. And she had one come through her line to test how she did. She was unaware of it at the time, but she did everything right. And her supervisor came back and presented her with a courtesy cashier pin that she still has. It's a nice pin. And when I worked there, I did primarily grocery, did some bagging when I started out, and then grocery, and then started stocking the shelves, and worked produce as well. Worked in the meat department for a while, so I made it around the entire store pretty much. But I remember we had about 4 guys on the stock crew, and going in there, and we'd get a truck in, and that truck was loaded from the bottom all the way to the top. And I'd open the back of that trailer, and I usually put everything on the rollers to roll it in. And I'd open that door, and that thing would be, just packed in there. And I knew it was going to be a long night. But we got through with it, and then after we got through with it, I would put it up on the rollers to roll it in, and then you had a box cutter that would cut all the boxes as they were coming in the door, and then you had a pricer, and then the guy on the inside, like I said, it's 4 of us, he would put it on the gondolas, the correct gondolas that went to the select aisles that the items went on. So when we got it all done, the truck unloaded, we'd have to stock it out. And we didn't leave until we finished stocking. We'd go in about 8 or 9 o'clock at night, and there were some nights where you didn't get off till the next morning, even later than that. I remember one night, I think it was the longest night we worked. We went in at 9 and I got off at 1 the next day. And man, I felt like a zombie. It was all that I could do was drive home and go to bed. I was give out and then have to go back in the next night. It was pretty tough, but we have a lot of memories from that. But Miss Cutter and I worked with them, like we said, several years, and I guess about 5 or 6 for us each, wouldn't it, respectively?
74 to 80 for me.
74 to 80 for Miss Cutter, and I think it was 75 for 80 for me. So, but I wanted to talk to you about the standards, how they've changed nowadays. It's just not only in that area, but other areas as well. It's amazing how things have gone downhill, and people just don't care anymore. You know, Miss Cutter and I also talk about back when people traveled back in the day. Everybody went out in their best and wore suits and nice dresses, and women wore hats and carried their purses and everything, but boy, they don't care about how they look or go nowadays. But I guess that's enough of my rambling on here, but wanted to talk about the old grocery store business. Oh yeah, I wanted to mention about customer service. You know, if you was stocking out a aisle, somebody asked you where something was, you didn't just do your shoulders in there and say, I don't know. You found out what they needed and you walked them to it and got it for them or helped them find it, or whatever the customer was, whatever, you know, they needed or wanted. You took care of the customer. There wasn't any question about customer service. They were first. And back then, they could decide who they wanted to hire. If you wasn't qualified, you wouldn't get the job. But I remember distinctively my boss telling me that never discuss never discuss religion or politics. Oh man, he said that stay away from discussing anything with the customers that might be contentious or might cause some disagreement. And so we just stayed away from that. But I tell you one thing, back then, it wasn't you deciding what you was and wasn't going to do. If they told you to do something, you better do it. If you didn't do it, you didn't have a job. And you were let go or sent home or something. I mean, things were a lot different back then. You didn't get to decide what you was and wasn't going to do. If they told you to work in a certain department or told you you had to do something, you better do it or you'd be on the street. Thought we'd add that little tidbit in there, and appreciate you taking the time to listen. This turned out to be longer than I thought, but Miss Cutter and I have a lot of memories of back in the day. You all take care and appreciate you listening.